First of all, welcome to Kagyu Samyuzon Edinburgh, whether you're in the room or online. So some of you are new to these sessions, so I'll just explain. We're doing this living the legacy of Akong Rinpoche, the founder of our centre, and of much else besides. So a great bodhisattva, could say a living Buddha, who is no longer with us in the flesh, but is definitely with us in the mind. And also thanks to the teachings, some of the teachings that he gave were transcribed. And so I'm using these as a basis for his teachings. They're not my teachings. I'm simply relaying them with an added dollop of enthusiasm, possibly. So this is the 6th session in the series, but you don't have to have done them all sequentially. You know, he gave them at different times, so it's fine if it's your first time. Okay, so we start each session. We will say the refuge prayer. So we'll say it once in English, and then in the Tibetan phonetics twice. And then we can say the 4 immeasurables, which we'll say just once in English and once in the Tibetan phonetics. We'll keep it simple but heartfelt. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the noblest Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. Through the virtue generated by the practice of generosity and other virtues, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake and benefit of all beings. Sanje Chatan Suji Chanam La Chancho Padu Dani Chapsunji Dagi Jinso Jepe Sanamji Dola Penche Sanjay Do Parsho Sanjay Chotan Suji Chonam La Chancho Padu Dani Chapsunji Dagi Jinso Jepe Sanamji Dola Penche Sanjay Do Parsho. May all beings be happy and create the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and from creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness that can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal, impartial compassion, free of bias to friends or enemies. Sem chen tam che dewatan, dewe jutan dempar juchik, dunya tan, dunya chi jutan trawa juchik, dunya mepe dewatan patan mindrawa juchik. Yering chadang tang chawe tang yom chempula nepa jorchi. Paden sawe lama rinpoche dagi chiwo pende de shukla katrin chempo gone je sumte kusuntu chi ngudru sautu so. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, that's the prayer to the root guru. Which in my case is Akong Rinpoche, so I just have to check in and hope that I don't mess up. So this session will be on the subject of mindfulness, about which you may have already heard. But I think it's very important to go back to something very practical, because I remember the first time I heard somebody talk to Rinpoche about mindfulness, it was in Samiling, and it was they were introducing the topic. It was at the beginning, before it had sort of exploded, and various people spoke, and at the end of it Rinpoche listened to them all. It went on for at least an hour, if not more. And then he said, but where's the compassion? so they'd kind of forgotten that. But since then it's been added. So the thing is that when, that's not meant to be a criticism of anybody, but it's so easy to get caught up in things that are slightly new to us or kind of a bit exotic because they come from the East or something. We have to really bring it down to who we are and what we would aspire to be. And if you look at, we have the best example of that is the Buddha himself. So what was he motivated by? Compassion and loving kindness. Compassion, after having seen people suffering, not just people, but beings in general. It was having seen that suffering when he left the palace, and that inspired him, motivated him to see if it was possible to get out of this suffering. And then the other side of the same coin is the loving kindness. That's the kind of more looking at how can I not only get out of suffering but become happy, be happy in our lives. What will lead us to that? And that's how the whole thing began. So to forget that is not a good idea. That's really at the root of all the Buddhist teachings. Whatever they may be, that's the kind of seed of them, So the other thing that is important is that when we talk about mindfulness, it's not just a method of meditation. It's the meditation, but it's also to apply it in our daily lives. It has to be practical. That's what we do it for. It's not to get a degree or something like that. It's to use this. So it's a method of inculcating or developing our natural compassion and loving kindness. And so we use it for meditation and in our daily life. And eventually, when we really got it, there's no difference between the two. There's no difference between daily life and meditation. It all becomes as one. It always was, but we didn't realize it. So what does Akong Rinpoche have to say about mindfulness? What I'm going to do is read through a passage, and then we'll sort of discuss it a little bit, and then I'll carry on like that. So mindfulness means to be aware in every moment of your thoughts when they appear. You have to be mindful, but it doesn't mean that you have to think, oh, I've had a bad thought, oh, I've had a good thought, or become judgmental or anything like that. Just the fact that you're aware of your thoughts. During meditation time, there are no such things as good thoughts or bad thoughts. So now he's talking about mindfulness as a meditation, or within the scope of meditation. So yes, you might have thoughts that you would identify as being pleasant or unpleasant, good or bad, but that is not the point. You really don't have to be judgmental. A thought's a thought. It doesn't matter. You don't need to bother with whether it's... You don't need to judge it in any way. So thinking good and bad is not meditation. It actually becomes a distraction. You're busy judging. So you're busying your mind with value judgments on things, and then there's no meditation. It becomes a distraction. So in the context of meditation, mindfulness means accepting whatever thoughts arise. Non-judgmentally, you just accept. You had a thought, yeah. And then seeing that they are just different types of thought. So you see there's a different type of thought, but you don't put a judgment on it. It's as if you look into the sky and you see clouds. And so some clouds look like nice pink fluffy clouds, others might be threatening or look like thunder clouds, some might look in the shape of a mouse, another in the shape of a dragon. I mean, you can get very caught up in it all. And when you keep looking at the patterns in clouds, you can get too involved thinking, oh, when I went out of the door today, I saw this lion cloud. That must mean something for me. It must be really significant. What does it mean? And then you're just making trouble for yourself. If you see that everything is just a cloud, it really doesn't matter. It's talking about meditation. If, for example, you wanted to be inspired by clouds and do artwork of clouds, say, then it's fine to see dragons in clouds or mice in clouds or whatever. But in terms of meditation and looking at things as they are, in your mind as it is, you don't need to get involved with it. Even if the clouds fall down on your head, it doesn't really make any difference. If you've never been in an aeroplane and you look down on the clouds, they might seem solid. And when the aeroplane goes through the clouds, you might panic. You might think you're going to fall down, or that the aeroplane is going to crash into the clouds. This is the result of that kind of imagination. You're just imagining stuff, basically. You're not seeing things as they really are. I'm saying the imagination has a place in life, definitely, but not when you're just tuning into how things actually are. So, in the Mahamudra teachings, which are the Mahamudras are very high teachings, it is said that you should not be looking at the pattern of your mind, whether it's a good pattern or when you get thoughts when you're meditating, and you might think, oh, I'm not supposed to have thoughts. I think there's a big misconception that people think, oh, I've got to be like really empty of thoughts and just go into this la la land place or something. It's not like that. You will always have thoughts. It's normal, it's natural, and they're not your enemy. What's your enemy is your grasping mind. The grasping, not the mind itself, obviously, but the grasping nature, or the wanting to sort of be either attracted by something and then you want to proliferate those thoughts because they're pleasant, or you don't want to, they find them unpleasant, so you reject them, and then there's a whole lot of energy goes into the rejecting of them. Either way, you're not meditating. You're either busy chasing after or running away from, which is what we do 24/7, really, in our lives. We either like something or we don't like something. I like this coffee like this, I don't like it like that. I like that flower, I'm not keen on those flowers. It's just endless. I like that person, I don't like the other person. That kind of dog is nice, but I don't like those kind of dogs. We just all the time. So if when you're trying to meditate, you're in this habit of it, so then whatever thoughts arise, you fall into doing that same thing, which is why we really need to be alert when we're meditating. You're not zoning out into la la land, it's quite the opposite. You need to be really sharp, sharpen your awareness. Be mindful, in other words. It's not just a word, it's a state of being mindful so that you know what your mind is doing, and whether you are grasping onto whatever it is, you need to be aware of that. So that's what the mindfulness is about. So don't look at the patterns of your mind, good pattern, bad pattern, beautiful pattern, ugly pattern. There is no such thing as ugliness. There is no such thing as goodness. They are all just different types of thoughts. You simply remain mindful of whatever is happening in your mind. So you're looking at it very objectively, impartially, not judging everything, just noticing what's happening. So when you, out of habit, grasp on something, you can nip it in the bud. You don't go off onto the next thought and the next thought and the next thought. You see it, and when you see it, and you know that you want to meditate, then you just allow it to go. You don't need to block it. You don't need to go into battle with it. You simply need to notice it and not grasp. So it's a matter of not doing. Meditation is all about not doing. There's no doing in it. But we're so used to doing all the time. We're so habituated to being busy, busy, busy. And even when we're not busy, even when we've got free time, we still make ourselves busy. So we are very habituated to it, not only in this life, but in countless lifetimes of being busy when we don't need to be. So you just leave them. They're just all different types of thoughts, and you simply remain mindful of whatever is happening in your mind. In Mahamudra, this very high teaching, there is nothing to throw out, and there's nothing to pick up. You don't grasp onto it. You don't need to chuck it out. You just leave it alone. There is no separation, as in, this is a good thing, I must keep that. That's a bad thing, I must get rid of it. Just leave it alone. Accept everything, leave it alone. In the meditation itself, you just treat everything the same. You do nothing, you do not do anything. If you do something, then it's no longer meditation. You're just doing it again. Back into your habit. Meditation is not like walking in a dark room, moving your hands to feel where the wall is or feel if there's something on the floor. Meditation means that you are walking as if in very clear light. You see everything, yet you do not choose one and throw out the other. You just accept whatever's there. Impartial. Don't need to get involved. You see everything, you don't choose one, don't throw out the other. You let everything come and go freely. Thoughts come and go, don't they? They never stay. If you leave the thought, just leave it be, it doesn't hang around. You could try that. They never stay. You can't hang on to a thought. It'll only lead to another thought. When you try to grasp it, that thought will morph into the next iteration of that thought. And then it's just, you're just thinking and doing what you normally do. So what you need to do is let everything just come and go. It's like if the wind is passing through, you might as well try and catch the wind as catch a thought. So you don't need to get involved. You just allow the wind to pass through. You don't put up a shield to stop it. You don't sort of welcome it, come wind, come. You just leave it alone, and it moves through at its own time. And you just allow that to happen. So that's how it is with thoughts. You let everything come and go freely. There's no need to sort anything out. You don't have to be busy. Oh, I'll keep that thought, that's a nice thought, I'll keep that one. Or that's horrible, I need to kick that one. You don't need to do that. You don't have to file them either for later. You don't have to do any of that. The experience of meditation is the whole idea of being empty. Some people meditate saying, we must get rid of all our thoughts because they're bad. The thoughts come from nowhere and they dissolve into nowhere. You will not be able to get rid of them until you accept them. If you don't accept them, then the fight ensues, which leads to more and more thoughts. So you just accept them. When you accept thoughts, they dissolve by themselves. Thoughts are like ice cream put into your warm hand. It'll melt by itself. You don't have to make ice cream melt, do you? It just melts. So it is with thoughts. I love that metaphor. Another way I see it sometimes is if you take another metaphor would be to see waves, like waves come out of the ocean. They appear, some small, some big, and they have this appearance for a while, and so we call them waves. We don't call that wave ocean, we call it a wave. But then that wave just dissolves back into the ocean. We don't stop the wave and try to freeze frame it or something. We just leave it, and it goes back into the ocean. But imagine if you tried to save a wave. We could start the movement, save the waves.
So that's what it's like with thought. Say that thought for later. It might be useful, you know. If it's useful, it'll pop back up. When you're meditating, you don't need to be doing all of that, because then if you do that, then there's no meditation. So if you're here to meditate, then that's what you're meant to be doing. Thinking time is thinking time, and you do that most of the time, the vast majority of the time. So this is, remember, we're talking about mindfulness within the context of meditation. Therefore, in one way, meditation can be very simple. This is so true. People can't, we can't understand how simple it is, because we always want to complicate things. Or it must, like, we even equate simple with being a bit stupid. Oh, that person's a bit simple. We have it as quite a derogatory term. Simple is good. Simple is great. Well, we complicate stuff and make life so hard for ourselves. And especially in meditation. So, of course, that's not to say that it's easy. Simple and easy are different, It's not easy to be simple, actually. It really isn't. It's easier to be complicated, because that's what most of us are doing most of the time. So if you want to be simple, whether in meditation we're talking about, but actually even in daily life, that is not easy. If you think of who led a simple life and who became enlightened through it, you can think of Milarepa. What did he have? Nothing, next to nothing. He had a bowl, he had some sort of poor quality cotton robe, no matter that he was living in Tibet in the land of snows, and he became enlightened by living a very, very simple life. I mean, we may not have to go to such extremes, we may not be Milarepa, but we have that potential. We have the potential to be Buddha. Anyway, it may be better to think not only of meditation, but also of prayer, of scriptures, of positive motivation, to think of these ways of changing our mind and the different visualizations, because all of these are methods, different things that can help you to understand. So here he's talking about different methods within the context of Buddhist prayers and methods and scriptures. But whenever you meditate, at whatever level, whether it's the beginner's level of Shine, or then Vipassana, or the highest level of Mahamudra, or some other meditation, it is very important to meditate without expectation, without having a result in your mind that's where you've got to get to. You won't have any meditation with that in your mind. Meditation is about seeing where you are now. Expectations are an obstacle for your practice, because then it sets up an aim. It's like you have an expectation to be there, but you're only here. So then you have to kind of climb up to be there, or wherever there is, or do something, or not deal with the situation or yourself in your mind as it is now, not seeing how it is now. Therefore, you're doing something quite artificial. You're aiming for a result that you have to imagine, because you're not there, so you don't know what it is or how it is. So you imagine something or other, and then you try to climb to get to that place, which doesn't exist. So you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And not only that, you won't be doing any meditation because you're too busy. So expectations are a big obstacle. I would say not only for your practice, but for life in general. And then he says, receiving a degree for your meditation is another obstacle for your development. So I think that's just, he's saying that because, there are people who study Buddhism who don't practice Buddhism at all, but they just study it as you would study any other academic topic, but they don't apply it. So and then they get a degree, get a qualification, and that's fine, and they, you know, go on to give lectures in it and whatever, but at no point is it applied. So that's just knowing about something, but not applying it. It's like you might read all about how to make a cup of coffee, a good cup of coffee. You've read it all, you've done all the theory. Or learning to drive, you've done all the theory, but you've never actually driven a car. But you might have, you know, you've passed the theory test, but you've never actually had that experience. So in that case, you're saying, well, so then how do you meditate? You should treat meditation like you would treat food. You need to eat food 3 or 4 times a day in order to maintain your body and in order to have some understanding. When we do not have understanding, we have so many delusions and so much suffering. Suffering is unnecessary. All suffering is due to misunderstanding and to the working of the mind. So basically, when he was talking about like eating 3 or 4 times a day, what he's saying there is that you don't have to right, I'm going to do 2 hours of meditation there, and then you try and sit for 2 hours, and you're not familiar with it, so you're not going to do it, and it's going to be your torture, so then you won't do it anymore. So better to build up and to eat, you know, like eat. You would eat small meals, but 3 or 4 times a day. So you could try like that, you know, maybe 15 minutes meditation. Try how you get on with that, and slowly build up. But it's important to be regular with it, or at least do some every day, because it's in that way it's like food. If you don't, you don't get any nourishment. So with food, you don't get any nourishment for your body. With meditation, you don't get the nourishment for your mind, and you don't progress either. So it just, you might, you know, if you just from time to time indulge in some so-called meditation, you don't progress. It's just you come back to where you were in the first place, and you don't really get the point of it, really. So if you think of it more like food that has to be eaten a little bit every day, that's better than waiting and then trying to do a whole lot of meditation when you've not habituated yourself to it. You won't succeed. You have to build it up, you know. Even that's a bit like food. And, you know, if you fast for quite a while and then you think, oh right, now I'm going to have a great big meal, you can't, because your stomach will have shrunk, and you can't face a lot of food, even though you might think you want it. You can't cope with it. So you have to do things gradually. Build up. So he's saying maybe it's not exhausting, and maybe it is not necessary to sit for a long time, but in short sessions, just not exhausting your mind, because the mind is delicate. You have to build it up. But you need to be gentle, but firm. So not ask too much of it in one go, but be firm that you do it regularly. Similar to how you would treat your child, you try to be kind, but at the same time, you need to be firm. Don't let it get away with murder. You didn't say that, I just said that. If you're mindful of everything that you do, such as talking, walking, or eating, then each action that you do becomes a spiritual action. If you do something that is spiritual, you might do something that one would recognize as spiritual, say prayer or something that looks very spiritual. But if your mind's not in the right place, then it's not a spiritual action. Because your mind's in New York or somewhere. It could be anywhere. On the other hand, you could be just doing something kind for somebody, or picking up some litter because it's there, not because it's your litter, but you're just picking it up. So that's making life easier, better for people. That's a spiritual action. But you're not dressed in robes or look like you're praying or anything, you know. It's not about what it looks like, it's about the motivation. So whether something is spiritual or not depends on your motivation and how you apply mindfulness in your daily life. So now we're talking more about in the daily life. Be mindful all the time. This is the objective. Mindful of your speech and of your conversation with other people. Mindful of your thoughts when you're alone. Mindful of how you move around other people. If you're mindful all the time, then you are living a spiritual life all the time. I wasn't present at this teaching when he gave it, but I did used to work closely with Rinpoche, and sometimes, the teachings would just be, he'd pop something out, and he, at one point he did say, be mindful, and we were doing stuff, be mindful. And I thought about it for a bit, and as I was doing whatever it was, and I said, Rinpoche, if I could be mindful all the time, then I would never need another teaching from you, would I? You didn't say yes or no, which means probably yes, but the chances of it happening are remote. So I suspect that thought might have gone through his mind. If you're mindful all the time, then you're living a spiritual life all the time. A spiritual life is not different from mindfulness. It is very useful to be mindful because you do not make mistakes, and therefore you don't cause other people suffering. All the mistakes we make are due to lack of mindfulness. This is a very good topic for meditating because it's so true. Think about when you do something, you just pop something out of your mouth, not really thinking how it might affect the other person. You don't mean to be mean, but that could be how it's taken, because just a little bit lack of mindfulness. That's just a small example, but you can think of huge consequences. Supposing you're in a very powerful position and some little bit of rubbish pops out of your mouth. Do we have to think too hard about where that might be happening right now? I'm not going to mention any names. But you see how much suffering can be caused, even just by, ordinary people in ordinary situations and just saying something, abrupt. Or how we, I'm very bad at kind of being mindful when I'm doing stuff. I'm rushing about a lot of the time, and so I end up breaking a toe or something, or going over my ankle, or just not being that mindful. When I'm mindful, then none of that happens. And I suspect most people have got incidents that they can put down to really just a lack of not really being fully present. Well, because we're always multitasking, jumping ahead to the next thing, like I've not finished doing that and I'm also already onto this. So that gets spilt or something, or that gets spilt because I've put that down, but I've not really watched properly where I'm putting it because I'm now doing this. Can you relate to that? Lack of mindfulness, isn't it? And so sometimes if it's just a small thing like that, then the worst thing that happens then is that it makes a mess and you've got to clean it up. But say that was a lack of mindfulness and you're driving a car and somebody dies because of it, So it can have serious repercussions. And then say if you're in a very high position and you do something like that, and then millions of people can be, or thousands of people can be affected by mindlessness. So all the mistakes we make are due to lack of mindfulness. That's really worth thinking about and meditating on. Look at it in incidents in your own life when you think, look, but maybe surely that wasn't. And if you delve a bit deeper, you'll see that the root of it was a lack of mindfulness, of not being present. So you don't have, it's not about judging yourself, but about getting to the source of why we suffer. You know? And then Rinpoche talks about, you know, you have to be easy on yourself. He says, I find it difficult sometimes to understand people's reaction if you say, I'm a Buddhist. I can really relate to this because I found the same thing. And because I'm dressed as a Buddhist, I don't even have to say it. As soon as you mention that you're a Buddhist, people think you can't make any mistakes. You're a Buddhist after all, you must be perfect. According to the Buddhist point of view, if you are 100% negative and just do the wrong things, but then one day you are able to change 5% to being positive, then you are still considered a Buddhist. Now, you are only 95% negative. In order to be called a Buddhist, you do not need to be 100% positive or perfect. But as soon as you change a little, at least one or two of your bad habits and turn them into positive ones, you can appreciate this and you can call yourself a Buddhist. The whole idea is that when you start the process of changing yourself, changing your life, understanding who you are and how you are, your life can be part of Buddhism, and you're never out of Buddhism as long as you're doing your best and working on that. Even if you're 99% bad and 1% good, you're still also a Buddhist. When you think about other Buddhist people, you should think about them in that way. Everybody can become Buddhist, but some will be able to change more than others, or some more Buddhist than others. It's a little bit George Orwell, isn't it? So you shouldn't look for everyone to be perfect just because they identify as Buddhist. We're human, and humans make mistakes. You should make allowances for those mistakes. So how do you do that? How do you make allowances for other people's mistakes and your own? The important thing is to have compassion. Compassion for yourself and compassion for others. So we all have the potential to be Buddha. We all have the potential to have limitless compassion and loving kindness, but we don't have limitless yet. We have that potential, but we have definitely a seed of loving kindness and compassion, which we show in our life, you know. So we have that ability to be compassionate, but we need to work constantly to develop compassion and mindfulness. Develop compassion for your friends, for yourself, for your enemy, for everybody. And forgive if you see that someone makes a mistake. That's really important. You know, when we see somebody make a mistake, we can take it personally as if it's directed against us, when it often isn't. They've just made a mistake, or even if it is, they've made a mistake. Like we make mistakes. You know, when we hurt people unintentionally, because of lack of mindfulness, which then is lack of understanding. So, just forgive if you see that someone has made a mistake. If you're a Buddhist, revenge is not a Buddhist principle. In other words, if somebody makes mistakes and hurts you in some way, you don't then think, right, that's it, I'm going to get them back. That's revenge, isn't it? And that proliferates everything. If it's, you know, on a personal level, you fall out with that person, you could come to blows with that person. If it's on a global level, then it will lead to war. And we can see both of those at any point of time in civilization. You can see it in individual, how it plays out like that, and how it plays out on a global level. And especially now with technology, we know what's going on around the world. That lack of forgiveness, that desire for revenge, which just proliferates everything. It doesn't answer anything. It just means more suffering. So it's important to forgive other people's mistakes and how to forgive your own mistakes. Forgiveness is a very important part of Buddhism. Developing compassion is very necessary, and remaining mindful is very good for the development of both. If you remain mindful, then the idea of Mahamudra, the highest state, is not far away. It's very important that we really apply this in our lives. But before we apply it, we have to test it. We have to see, is this true? Is this how it works? We don't need to accept anything without looking into it. We should definitely look into it. Because otherwise, if we just go, oh yeah, that sounds right, then, it's not really gone in. It's like if you go back to the food metaphor, that looks very nice. I'll have that. But you don't actually eat it. So you don't actually get it. You just think vaguely it sounds like a good idea, but you haven't taken it on board. And you should only take it on board once you've subjected it to your thought processes and your intelligence. Negativity is something that we invite without being aware we're doing it. I mean, if you ask somebody, do you like being negative? They'll say no, won't they? Nobody wants to be negative, nobody likes being negative. And yet, and they don't like having negative things happen, things that we judge to be negative or unpleasant in some way. And yet we invite it through lack of mindfulness. But we do it without being aware of it. So actually, in the ultimate sense, there is no such reality as negative or positive. There's no such sort of category as that, ultimately. Things are as they are, or they're not, But we don't. We're the ones that say that we judge this as being positive, we judge that as being negative. Things happen, stuff happens. But due to our upbringing, our habit, our education, or we name things as this is good, this is bad, this is positive, that's negative. Now you'd think that we wouldn't want that, we don't want the negative, but the negative comes because we invite it. How do we invite it? When it comes, we are unaware of having invited it, and we try to fight it. It's like shadow fighting. Wherever your body goes, the shadow goes. It makes me think of what we do, the way we do things. Like, for example, the way, a very modern example, I don't know if this is what the example I'm going to make is one that didn't exist when Rinpoche was alive. He died, more than 10 years ago, isn't it? 11, 12 years ago. I wasn't aware of AI then, or maybe it was a germ of something in somebody's brain, but it certainly wasn't the topic of conversation, and becoming very fast a reality, sort of. But, when people, for example, there's a lot in the news now about phone addiction, for example, especially in schools, but I mean, adults as well. And people now they're like this the whole time. Most people, you go down the street, the majority of people are like this. If you're on a bus, most people are like this. I had the radio on today. Somebody from the House of Lords was driving a bus for a charity, and he was also like this. And somebody saw him and reported him to the police. And then he gave himself up because he remembered that he was like this. That's how addictive it is. That's how negative it is. He could have killed, 50 people if he'd have swerved slightly. So he saw that he'd done something dangerous. I wonder how long it'll be before he's like this again. That's not to say you should never go on a phone, but be aware of what you're doing, And then, when you think about it, There's a lot of people right now being accused of, and guilty of, pornography, like child pornography and stuff like this. And they generally say, well, it started when I was just on my phone, and then I went a bit more, and then and then they're doing these like horrible, horrible things that become really seriously negative for them and for others. So that's a way in which we invite, a very kind of serious way that we invite negativity, we invite through lack of mindfulness. Those are two quite modern and sort of serious examples, but I think it's worth looking into, because we may think, well, I don't invite negativity. Why would I do that? You do it when you're not mindful. Nobody would choose to do it, but it's the lack of mindfulness that things just sneak in. So yeah, the negative comes because we invite it, but when it comes, we are unaware of having invited it, and we try to fight it. It's like shadow boxing. Wherever your body goes, the shadow goes. When you see the shadow, you don't realize it's your own shadow. You fight the shadow that you see. If you do not take the negativity too seriously, it will get less, because you're not inviting it or getting involved in it. If you're not able to do that, then you should put your focus on thinking positively. Through putting greater value on the positive things, the negative starts to decrease. Change the focus. You know, you're getting deeper and deeper into something negative, and you realize that, then if you find it so difficult to change the focus. Those are the things I emphasize for everybody. Be mindful. Be an ordinary human being. Don't try to be something extraordinary. Don't try to be Superman or Superwoman or whatever. That's when we get into bother, you know, because we fool ourselves. I recently received, like yesterday, an email from someone who was explaining how he'd had this vision and how this was this and this, and it sounded, but that's your imagination playing with you. And if you know that it's your imagination playing with you, that's fine. But if you don't know, then you're getting drawn into that. And that's a lack of mindfulness. And through that kind of lack of mindfulness, you can get drawn into all kinds of trouble. Whether through other people or just on your own. So we need to watch how we think, you know, and be mindful, not judgmental. But you could say discerning. You could choose, can't we? We can choose where we put our focus. We can choose up until when we're addicted. Then it's like the choice is gone. We're addicted. So we really need to be aware. What's awareness is mindfulness. It's the same. So he's saying, don't try to be something extraordinary. When children spend a lot of time watching cartoons, they copy sometimes and they act what they've seen in the cartoon. Sometimes you can break your neck. You jump over a cliff or something because you've seen a rabbit do it or something. You know it can be dangerous. You see it can do something silly. But we also mustn't mix the two things up. The children don't realize they're only human beings. They can't do what the cartoons do. They may try to copy them. So we also mustn't mix the two things up. We are human beings. So we must act as human beings within our capabilities. Especially physically, we can't fly, for example, without getting in a plane or something, but we can't just take off if we flap our arms arms very hard, it's not going to happen. So this might seem very obvious, but we are human beings. Therefore we should act as human beings. But we are human beings. We have a mind which is capable of enlightenment. So we're not there. We don't have to, there's a lot maybe, but we have that capability. And some people might think of that as being like superhuman, but we shouldn't see something as something extraordinary. Rinpoche was the perfect example of this. He gave up his robes and got married when he came to this country, and but he would still teach, only because the Karmapa told him to. He didn't choose to teach, but he would teach. But a lot of what he taught was through his example. I can't think of anybody, and I do mean anybody, who epitomizes loving kindness and compassion the way Akong Rinpoche did, and does, because I can't think of him as someone no longer with us in a way. His physical body isn't, but his mind is, and his teachings are. It's up to us to remain open to them, and then and follow them, and reap the benefits for ourselves and for others. So he looked very ordinary. He didn't have special robes on or anything. And he was extremely humble, very strong, very confident, but very humble. Those two things can be together, they're not in opposites. And I just remember the first time I sort of had the chance to talk to him in person, very new, I wasn't at Samyeling yet. I wasn't a nun or a Buddhist officially, but I had a chance to have a sort of an interview with him. And I just remember feeling very happy in his presence. And I thought, this thought came into my mind: how do you get to be like that? And I still think like that. It makes me shiver actually if I think like that, because it puts me right back in that place. And how do you get to be like that? That's what he's telling us. Be mindful, is what we're saying. So it's quite a short chapter, this one. Short but very deep, very full, and yet in some ways very ordinary, very human. So I think we can maybe just sit for a few minutes, and we can call it meditation, or we can just call it sitting, but we should have a good posture. So if you're sitting on a chair, that's fine, but you need to plant your feet on the floor. You can bring your bottom forward so that your feet are on the flat on the floor, and a little bit wide, sort of like directly under your knees, basically. And then just rest the eyes downwards, and leave them open a little bit. If you've got glasses on, you might want to take them off because you won't be needing them. But do keep your eyes slightly open. And then just rest the face muscles. Look, the eyes be resting, looking downwards, but then forget about looking, and you can blink whenever you want to blink. Just be natural with them. And just allow all the muscles in your face to relax. Just feel them soften. Your forehead, around your eyes, around your nose and mouth. If you allow your lips to be very slightly open, that will automatically relax your jaw. And relax the back of the head and the neck. Think of being suspended, so check your posture, check you're not leaning forwards or backwards.
Straighten up, but relax in a relaxed way. Breathing deeply, normally, but with a bit more attention to your breath. Relaxing your shoulders and all along your arms, down to the hands. Breathing in through the nose, into your chest, your diaphragm, your belly. Let the belly fill and deflate as you breathe out. So breathing fully in, holding for a few seconds, and breathing out. Just normally, but more fully. And as you breathe more fully, it has the effect of slowing down your breath, but also slowing down your mind. Just allow your mind, it's as if it's riding on the breath. Imagine you could breathe into your spine, relaxing all the muscles either side of your spine, all the way down to the waist area, then the lower back, the base of the spine. Relax your buttocks and your hip joints, your groin area, and down into the legs, relaxing the thighs, knees and calf muscles, down to the ankles, tops of the feet, and all the way down to the soles of the feet. And just imagine letting go of any tension out through the soles of the feet, letting it flow out, leaving your body relaxed while maintaining good posture, as if suspended, and yet feeling grounded. So nothing to do. Meditation is being mindful. It's not about doing. If anything, it's about not doing. Just be mindful. Be ordinary. Be human. whatever thoughts come up, no need to judge them. Just leave them be. Like clouds passing by. Your mind, like a clear sky, clear blue, with occasional cloud thoughts passing by, and you just allow them to pass, and you remain sky-like, limitless, mindful. So we won't do too long meditating. I mean, you can meditate as long as you like when you're on your own, but I'm also aware that we're filming and it could be a bit like watching paint dry. Hopefully people who are watching will meditate also. So we'll finish our session by dedicating the merit of our practice. So there's a short prayer at the bottom of the page. And we do this so that our practice, whatever we've done today, becomes good at the beginning, when we did the prayers at the beginning, the aspiration, and then hopefully good in the middle when we've been listening and thinking and weighing up the teachings and taking them on board. And then at the end, whatever virtue has come from that, to dedicate it and share it with all sentient beings. So then that is not such a selfish thing that it's, oh, any virtue is all mine. It's that you're sharing it with all beings. That's the motivation and the aspiration and the dedication. Through the wholesomeness of this practice, may all mental defilements be overcome, and may all beings be liberated from the ocean of samsara, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. O sanam de tamche sikpani, topne nye pe dranam pamche ne, jigana chi bala drukpai, sipe sale jawa sho. Okay, so that's it for today. When I say that's it, I mean that's it for this session, but you have the food, now it's up to you to eat it. And practice, test it, and use it. That's what it's for. If it just ends up as you're going in one ear and out the other, then it's not much use. So we need to test it and use it. And then that's how to, it's not to pass an exam, it's to become free from suffering, and to help others become free from suffering. So we know that what leads to the suffering is the mindlessness, is the lack of mindfulness. But we need to really see how that works in our life, Okay, so anyway, I've said enough, and we all try and do our best. That's all we can do, isn't it? Well, thank you, everybody, and see you next time.